The warning alarm screamed through the bridge of the exploration vessel, Harmony's Edge, as Captain Lee Jun gripped the control panel. Massive asteroids tumbled past the view screen, some as large as city blocks, their surfaces scarred by countless collisions over millions of years. The asteroid field around Kepler 442c was notorious among space pilots, a graveyard of ships that had tried to navigate its chaotic maze. "Energy spike detected, Captain," called out Park Min-ho from the engineering station, his fingers dancing, across holographic displays. Sparks flew from an overloaded circuit as the ship shuddered from a near miss with a spinning rock fragment. "Whatever's down there is definitely artificial. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Kim Sora looked up from her medical equipment, concern etched on her face. "The radiation levels are increasing. We should be careful about extended exposure." She adjusted her scanner, frowning at the results. "But there's something strange. The radiation signature has organic components mixed with technological ones." Dr. Choi Hana pressed her nose against the observation window, her xenobiology equipment humming softly beside her. "Look at the moon's surface," she whispered. "Those aren't natural formations." Through the swirling dust and debris, faint geometric patterns were visible carved into the rocky landscape, too precise to be random, too weathered to be recent. Captain Lee Jun made the decision that would change everything. "Take us down. If there's life here, we need to know about it." The ship's engines roared as they descended through the thin atmosphere, dodging floating debris and navigating by instruments alone. The surface was a wasteland of grey rock and twisted metal. Ancient crash sites dotted the landscape, their origins lost to time. But the energy readings led them to a series of cave entrances, carved with symbols that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Stay close," Lee Jun ordered as they suited up for surface exploration. "And keep your weapons ready. We don't know what we're walking into." The caves descended deep into the moon's core, their walls lined with a strange crystalline substance that reflected their helmet lights in brilliant rainbows. The air was thin but breathable, filled with an almost musical humming that seemed to come from the rock itself. Then they saw the first glow. It started as a faint blue shimmer in the distance, like bioluminescent plankton in Earth's oceans. But as they moved closer, the light resolved into patterns, intricate, beautiful designs that moved and shifted like living artwork. "By the stars," breathed Choi Hana. "It's not just light, it's communication." The creatures emerged from the shadows like living gemstones. No taller than human children, their translucent skin pulsed with waves of blue, green, and silver light. Their large eyes held intelligence and fear in equal measure. They wore simple garments woven from some kind of organic fiber that sparkled with embedded minerals. The largest of them stepped forward, his light patterns shifting to deep purple, a color that somehow conveyed both authority and exhaustion. When he spoke, his voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Strangers, from the void above," he said in halting galactic standard, each word carefully pronounced. "I am Nimtar, speaker for the forgotten." His bioluminescent patches flickered with what could only be described as sadness. "Are you here to take the last of us away?" Park Min-ho activated his translation device, fine-tuning it to pick up the subtle harmonics in the alien's speech. As the universal translator worked, more of the story emerged. The Veltari had once been starfarers, their ships powered by their own biological energy. They had traveled between worlds, sharing their gift of healing light with other species. But the Drak Empire had seen opportunity in their abilities. 2 centuries ago, Drak warships had surrounded the Veltari homeworld. There had been no negotiation, no warning. The Veltari were simply taken, families separated, children torn from parents, an entire civilization reduced to property. "They used us," Nimtar continued, his light patterns now showing flashes of angry red. "Our light could heal their warriors, power their machines, even extend their lives. We were livestock to them." Kim Sora's medical scanner detected the full scope of the tragedy. The Veltari were literally dying from the inside out. Their bioluminescent organs were failing without proper nutrition and environmental conditions. Many of the younger ones had never learned to fully control their light, their patterns weak and unstable. When the Drac found synthetic alternatives, Nimtar explained, "They brought us here, told us we were free. But freedom on a dead rock is just another kind of prison." The caves were filled with makeshift shelters, sheets of salvaged metal bent into crude huts, heating elements cobbled together from broken machinery. Children peered out from behind their parents, their lights dim and flickering like dying candles. Choi Hana knelt beside a small Veltari child, whose light had almost completely faded. The little one looked up at her with eyes full of curiosity rather than fear. "Are you from the bright worlds?" the child asked in perfect galactic standard. "The ones with two suns like in the old stories." The human team exchanged glances. They had come here expecting to find mineral deposits, or perhaps evidence of ancient civilizations. Instead, they had found something far more precious and far more heartbreaking. An entire species slowly fading away, forgotten by a galaxy that had used them and discarded them like broken tools. As they prepared to leave that first day, young Veltari began following them to the cave entrance. Their lights pulsed in synchronized patterns, a farewell song in a language of living light that needed no translation. Dr. Choi Hana couldn't sleep. For 3 days straight, she had been running tests on the Veltari tissue samples that Elder Nimtar had willingly provided. Her portable laboratory aboard the Harmony's Edge hummed with activity as scanners, analyzers, and bioprocessors worked around the clock. What she discovered made her hands shake with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this," she called over the ship's intercom at 0300 hours. Her voice carried a mixture of wonder and disbelief that made Lee Jun abandon his morning coffee and rush to the science bay. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional model of Veltari cellular structure rotating slowly in the air between them. But this wasn't like any biology textbook diagram. The cells pulsed with actual light, and tiny particle streams flowed between them like rivers of liquid starlight. "Watch this," Hana said, inputting new data. The display zoomed in on a single bioluminescent organ. "I introduced common space bacteria to a Veltari cell sample. Look what happened." The bacteria appeared as dark spots in the projection. But as they made contact with the Veltari cells, something incredible occurred. The light patterns shifted, reorganized, and suddenly the bacteria were gone. Not destroyed, but transformed into something completely different. "The bacteria became medicine," Hana whispered. "Actual working medicine. The Veltari cells converted harmful organisms into healing compounds. They're not just immune to disease, they turn disease into cure." Lee Jun stared at the display. "Are you telling me they're living drug factories?" "Better than that," Hana continued, bringing up another set of readings. "I tested them with toxic waste from our recycling systems, heavy metals, chemical pollutants, even radioactive particles. The Veltari cells processed everything, broke it down to base elements and reconstituted it into useful materials. Captain, they could clean up entire planets." Meanwhile, Park Minho had been busy in his own investigation, diving deep into the Galactic Council's databases through their ship's quantum communication array. What he found made his engineering mind reel with anger. "Guys, we need to talk," he announced, his face grim as he entered the science bay. "I've been digging through official records, and what I found is going to make you sick." He activated the main display, showing document after document streaming past. The Galactic Council knew exactly what the Veltari could do. "Look at this. Medical supply contracts worth billions of credits. The Drac Empire wasn't the only one using them. The Silicon Hegemony used Veltari to clean their polluted mining worlds. The Crystal Collective used them to purify their water systems. Even the supposedly peaceful Harmony Alliance used them as living air filters on their space stations." The documents painted a picture of systematic exploitation that spanned decades. The Veltari had been traded between species like valuable equipment, their children separated from parents and sent to different corners of the galaxy based on their specific abilities. "But here's the worst part," Minho continued, his voice tight with rage. "When synthetic bioprocessors became cheaper to manufacture, they just discarded them. Look at this classification." A single line of text appeared on the screen. Veltari. Species, status, resource depleted. Recommended action. Disposal in non-inhabited systems. They threw away an entire civilization, Li Jun said quietly, like broken machinery. Kim Sora had been conducting her own research in the medical bay, running every test she could think of on the biological samples. Her discovery was perhaps the most remarkable of all. "Captain, I need to show you something that changes everything," she said, calling the team to her station. "I've been analyzing the Veltari immune system, and it's not just that they don't get sick. They actively heal their environment." She pulled up a time-lapse video from her microscopic cameras. "I placed Veltari cells in contaminated water from our waste systems. Watch this." The footage showed murky, polluted liquid slowly becoming crystal clear as the Veltari cells moved through it like tiny janitors of light. "But that's not all," Sora continued. "I tested their blood against every major galactic plague in our medical database. Corvan death fever, Zentari rot, even the mechanical virus that destroyed the android republics. The Veltari cells neutralized all of them." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "They're not just immune, they're the cure for everything. The galaxy has been fighting diseases for millennia that the Veltari could have solved in days." The revelation hit the team like a physical blow. An entire species with the power to heal worlds, to clean polluted systems, to cure diseases that had claimed billions of lives across the galaxy, and they had been treated as disposable tools. That's when Captain Li Jun's communication console chimed with an incoming priority message from Earth Command. The holographic projection of Admiral Park Seong-jin materialized in the room, his expression stern and businesslike. "Captain Li, we've received your preliminary reports about the discovered species on Kepler 442c, the Admiral said without preamble. "Earth Command has reviewed the situation with our Galactic Council liaisons. You are ordered to complete your mineral survey and return immediately. Do not engage in further contact with the indigenous population." Li Jun felt his stomach drop. "Sir, with respect, these aren't just indigenous people. They're refugees of galactic exploitation, and they're dying. We can help them." "Captain," the Admiral's voice carried a warning, "the Veltari are classified as a pre-existing galactic arrangement. The Council has made it clear that human interference in their situation would be considered a hostile act. We cannot risk humanity's standing in the galactic community for the sake of 700 aliens on a dead moon." The transmission ended, leaving the four humans staring at empty air. In the silence that followed, they could hear the distant humming from the caves below, the sound of the Veltari slowly singing themselves into extinction. "So that's it?" Minho asked, his voice bitter. "We just leave them here to die so we don't upset the same governments that threw them away in the first place?" Li Jun looked at his team, these three people who had become more than crew members over their months together in deep space. He saw the same conflict in their eyes that was tearing at his own heart. Outside the ship's viewport, the first hints of the Veltari's bioluminescent gardens began to glow in the gathering darkness, a beautiful sight that might be the last light their species ever created. The proximity alarm screamed across the bridge of Harmony's Edge as three massive shapes dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Li Jun rushed to the view screen, his heart sinking at what he saw. Drak Empire warships, each one 5 times the size of his exploration vessel, their hulls black as space itself and bristling with weapon arrays that could vaporize an entire city. "Incoming transmission," Park Minho reported, his voice tight with tension. "They're demanding we respond immediately." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred face of Commander Vexhul. The Drak officer's reptilian features were twisted in what might have been a smile, but his yellow eyes held no warmth. Battle scars crisscrossed his scaled skin, and cybernetic implants glowed red where his left eye should have been. "Human vessel," Vexhul's voice was like grinding metal. "You are trespassing in Drak territorial space. You will surrender immediately, and prepare to be boarded." Li Jun stepped forward, keeping his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "This is Captain Li Jun of the Earth vessel Harmony's Edge. We're conducting a peaceful scientific survey. We had no knowledge this system was claimed." Vexhul's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Peaceful? You have made contact with Drak property. Our sensors detected your interference with our assets on the surface." He gestured off-screen, and another Drak officer approached with a data pad covered in holographic text. "These documents filed with the Galactic Council Registry Office, 247 standard years ago, clearly establish ownership of all Veltari specimens in this system, Vexhul continued. They are indentured servants bound by legal contracts with no termination clause. They belong to the Drak Empire. Dr. Choi Hana moved closer to the screen, her scientific mind rebelling against what she was hearing. They're not property. They're sentient beings. You can't own people. People? Vexhul's cybernetic eye flared brighter. These are biological resources, human, useful ones when properly maintained. We invested considerable time and effort in their training. They will be returned to productive service. The transmission cut out, leaving the human crew staring at a blank screen. Within minutes, another signal came through, this time bearing the official seal of the Galactic Council. The Council's mediator was a Zentari, a floating jellyfish-like creature whose translucent body pulsed with neutral colors. Greetings, human representatives. I am Mediator Velnash. The Galactic Council has reviewed the territorial dispute filed by the Drak Empire. Park Minho pulled up the legal databases, his fingers flying over the controls as he searched for precedents, loopholes, anything that might help. What he found made his heart sink further. The Council finds that the Drak Empire's claims are legally valid under established galactic law. Velnash continued, in a voice like wind through crystal chimes. The Veltari were legally acquired, and their status as indentured servants is properly documented. Human interference in this matter would constitute theft of registered property. Captain Lee Jun felt his world tilting. What about their rights as sentient beings? Don't they get a say in their own fate? The concept of individual rights varies significantly between species, Velnash replied, with bureaucratic coldness. The Galactic Council respects the diverse cultural approaches to resource management among member species. However, we must warn you, any attempt to remove Drak property will result in immediate economic sanctions against Earth and potentially military action. The transmission ended, leaving the four humans in stunned silence. Through the ship's viewport, they could see the Drak warships moving into attack formation, their weapons powering up with an ominous red glow. Down in the caves, the Veltari had sensed the approaching danger. Their bioluminescent patterns had shifted to deep purples and blacks, colors that spoke of fear and despair. Elder Nimtar approached the human team with several other Veltari elders, their lights flickering like dying stars. The Sky Hunters have returned, Nimtar said simply. We felt their ship's poison touch our light songs from above. You should leave now before they decide you are also property to be claimed. But it was then that something extraordinary happened. A young Veltari, barely the size of a human child, stepped forward from behind the elders. Her name was Kirasa, and her light patterns were different from the others, brighter, more complex, with swirls of gold mixed in with the traditional blues and greens. Wait, she said in perfect galactic standard, her voice clear despite her obvious fear. Before you go, let me show you something. Kirasa knelt beside a small pool of brackish water that had collected from condensation in the cave. The humans had been using it for their equipment, but it was badly contaminated with mineral deposits and bacteria. As they watched, the young Veltari placed her hands in the water. Her bioluminescent patterns intensified, flowing down her arms and into the murky pool. The water began to glow. Then slowly, impossibly, it became crystal clear. Not just clean. It sparkled with an inner light that seemed to pulse with life itself. This is what we really are, Kirasa said softly. Not factories or tools or property. We are gardeners of light. We make dead things live again. She looked up at Kim Sora, with eyes that held wisdom far beyond her apparent years. The Sky Hunters call us Malneth. The word means useful waste in their language, but our true name is Veltari. It means those who kindle hope in darkness. Captain Lee Jun knelt beside the young being, his decision crystallizing in his mind like Kirasa's purified water. What do you want us to do? Remember us, she whispered. When we are gone, remember that we had names. Remember that we loved our children and sang to the stars. Remember that we were Veltari, not Malneth. The communication console chirped with another incoming message. This time it was Commander Vexhul again. his patience clearly at an end. "Human Captain, you have 30 minutes to evacuate the system. Any Veltari found aboard your vessel will be considered stolen property, and your ship will be destroyed." Lee Jun stood slowly, looking at his crew. Park Min-ho was running calculations on his engineering pad, probably figuring out how many Veltari their cargo holds could accommodate. Kim Sora was already preparing medical supplies for a mass evacuation. Dr. Choi Hana was staring at the purified water, tears streaming down her face. "Captain," Park Min-ho said quietly, "if we do this, there's no going back. Earth Command will court-martial us. The Galactic Council will brand us criminals. Humanity might be banned from galactic society forever." Lee Jun looked around the cave at the 723 Veltari faces, watching him with a mixture of hope and resignation. Children who had never seen their homeworld's twin sons, elders who remembered freedom, families who had been torn apart and somehow found each other again in this place of exile. "Minho," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command and absolute certainty, "prep the cargo holds for passengers. Sora, get medical stations ready for 723 beings. Hana, help them gather whatever they can carry." He turned to Elder Nimtar and young Kirasa. "We're taking you home, all of you, all of..." The Veltari's bioluminescent patterns exploded in brilliant golds and whites, colors of joy that filled the cave with light like a sunrise. The evacuation was chaos controlled by desperation. Park Min-ho worked frantically in the cargo bay, rerouting life support systems and atmosphere processors to accommodate 723 Veltari refugees. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as he pushed the ship's systems far beyond their design limits. "I need more power to the environmental controls," he shouted over the whine of overtaxed machinery. "These beings need a specific mineral mixture in their air, or they'll start dying within hours." Kim Sora ran through the ship's corridors, her arms full of medical supplies and emergency rations. She had converted the ship's gymnasium into a makeshift medical bay, setting up dozens of portable beds and biomonitors. The Veltari children were loaded first, their lights dim with fear but flickering with something that might have been hope. Elder Nimtar helped coordinate the evacuation, his bioluminescent patterns serving as a beacon for his people. "The young ones first," he instructed in his musical voice. "Then the healers, then the memory keepers. If we must leave some behind, let it be the old ones like me." "No one gets left behind," Captain Lee Jun said firmly, personally carrying an injured Veltari elder whose lights had faded to barely visible whispers. "We all go home together, or we don't go at all." Dr. Choi Hana worked alongside the Veltari to gather their most precious possessions. Not gold or technology, but living light gardens and memory crystals that contained the recorded history of their people. Young Kirasa clutched a small glowing orb that contained, she explained, the last song of her grandmother. The proximity alarms began screaming just as the final Veltari family boarded the ship. Through the view screen they could see the Drak warships moving into attack position, their weapon arrays glowing with deadly energy. "All hands, prepare for emergency departure," Lee Jun announced over the ship's intercom. "This is going to get rough." The Harmony's edge lifted off from the moon's surface just as the first Drak plasma bolt struck the ground where they had been standing. The ship shuddered under the impact of near misses, and several Veltari children began crying, their lights flashing in rapid patterns of distress. "Captain, they're jamming our hyperspace drive," Park Min-ho reported from the engine room. "We can't jump to light speed with 3 warships targeting us. Their interference is scrambling our navigation computers." Commander Vexhul's voice crackled over the communication system. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Council law. Return our property immediately or be destroyed." "The only property here is my ship," Lee Jun replied, his hands steady on the controls as he piloted through a field of asteroid debris. "And these aren't your possessions. They're refugees seeking asylum." What happened next would be remembered as humanity's first real space battle. The Harmony's Edge was an exploration vessel, not a warship. It had no weapons, no armor, no shields designed for combat, but it had something the Drak hadn't counted on: human creativity and alien allies. Park Min-ho was the first to improvise. "Captain, the mining lasers in our equipment bay, they're industrial grade. If I can reroute power from non-essential systems..." "Do it," Lee Jun ordered. throwing the ship into a spiral to avoid incoming fire. The hull groaned under the stress, and several deck plates buckled from the pressure. Within minutes, the ship's mining equipment had been converted into makeshift weapons. Industrial cutting lasers meant for asteroid mining became plasma cannons. Magnetic containment fields designed for ore processing became energy shields. Even the ship's 3D fabricators were repurposed, churning out armor plating and weapon components in real time. But the real surprise came from the Veltari themselves. As the Drac ships closed in for the kill, something extraordinary happened. The 723 refugees began to glow in perfect synchronization, their bioluminescent patterns creating a complex, shifting mandala of light that filled the cargo bay. "What are they doing?" Kim Sora asked, watching in amazement as the light show intensified. "Elder," Nimtar's voice came over the ship's intercom. "We are singing the Confusion Song. It is an old war chant from before the Sky Hunters took us. Watch their weapons." On the view screen, the Drac targeting systems began to malfunction. Their plasma bolts went wide, striking empty space instead of the human ship. Their missile guidance systems spun in circles, unable to lock onto their target through the coordinated light interference. "Impossible!" Commander Vexhul snarled over the comm. "No species has natural electronic warfare capabilities." "You never asked what we could do," Nimtar replied calmly. "You only cared what we could make for you." The battle became a deadly dance through the asteroid field. Li Jun used every trick he'd learned in 20 years of deep space exploration, hiding behind spinning rocks and using the debris field's natural cover. The converted mining lasers carved through Drac armor like butter, while the Veltari's light song kept the enemy weapons confused and ineffective. Park Min-ho worked miracles in the engine room, coaxing impossible performance from systems never designed for combat. He rerouted power from life support, environmental controls, even the ship's gravity generators to keep their improvised weapons firing. The turning point came when young Kirasa approached Captain Li Jun on the bridge. "Let me help," she said simply. "I can make their machines sleep." Before anyone could stop her, she placed her small hands on the ship's main computer console. Her bioluminescent patterns flowed into the ship's systems, and suddenly the harmonies. Edge was alive in ways its designers never intended. The ship's sensors became impossibly precise, its weapons fired with perfect accuracy, and its engines sang with harmonious efficiency. The first Drac warship went down when its main reactor overloaded, struck by a perfectly placed mining laser, burst. The second lost power when its computer systems crashed, infected by some kind of living light virus that Kirasa had created. The third ship, commanded by Vexhul himself, retreated to a safe distance and called for reinforcements. "This isn't over, human," the Drac commander transmitted. "The Empire has 1,000 ships, you have one. We will hunt you across the galaxy." "Then you'll have to catch us first," Li Jun replied, as Park Min-ho finally managed to clear the hyperspace. Jamming. "Min-ho, get us out of here." The Harmony's Edge jumped to light speed just as Drac reinforcements arrived. The pursuing fleet found only empty space and the wreckage of their own ships, along with a message beacon broadcasting footage of the battle across all galactic frequencies. The news reached Earth within hours. Captain Li Jun, humanity's first. Space combat hero. The Veltari, refugees with incredible abilities who had chosen to fight alongside their human rescuers. The Drac Empire, exposed as slavers and war criminals who had been deceiving the Galactic Council for centuries. Public opinion on Earth exploded in support of the refugees. Protest marches filled the streets of every major city. Remember, the Veltari became a rallying cry for human rights across the galaxy. Children drew pictures of the glowing aliens, and musicians composed songs about the Battle of Kepler 4042c. Earth's government, initially furious at Li Jun's disobedience, found themselves forced to support his actions or face revolution at home. Admiral Park Seong-jin's official statement was brief but historic. Captain Li Jun acted with honor and courage in the face of injustice. Humanity stands with the Veltari. As the Harmony's Edge flew through hyperspace toward human space, 723 Veltari refugees glowed softly in the cargo bay, their light songs mixing with the ship's engine hum in perfect harmony. They were free, they were safe, and they were going home to a world that would welcome them with open arms. The galaxy would never be the same. The transport ships descended through New Harmony's pink-tinged atmosphere like gentle giants carrying precious cargo. Governor Lee Minseo watched from the spaceport as the first wave of Veltari refugees stepped onto solid ground for the first time in over 2 centuries. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered with wonder as they felt real soil beneath their feet and breathed air that didn't taste of recycled metal and desperation. New Harmony had been humanity's most challenging terraforming project, a world with stubborn soil that refused to support earth crops and an atmosphere that seemed hostile to most forms of life. The colonists had struggled for 3 years, watching their gardens wither and their hopes fade with each failed harvest. But within days of the Veltari's arrival, everything changed. Young Kirasa was the first to kneel in the barren fields outside the main settlement. Her hands glowed as she touched the lifeless dirt, and where her light penetrated the soil, something magical happened. Tiny shoots of luminescent plants began to sprout, their leaves shimmering with the same gentle radiance as their gardeners. "It's not just that they can grow things," Dr. Choi Hana reported to Captain Lee Jun, now promoted to Admiral for his actions at Kepler 442c. "They're changing the fundamental chemistry of the planet. The soil minerals are being restructured at a molecular level." Within weeks, the Veltari had created sprawling gardens that looked like something from a fairy tale. Trees with crystalline bark that filtered water from the air, flowers that glowed with their own inner light and produced medicines that could cure diseases human doctors had never encountered, fruits that tasted like starlight and provided perfect nutrition for both humans and Veltari alike. The human colonists watched in amazement as their struggling settlement transformed into a paradise of living light. Children who had been pale and sickly from the planet's harsh conditions began to thrive in the purified atmosphere the Veltari gardens produced. Elder Nimtar established the first Council of Harmony, where humans and Veltari worked together to govern their shared world. "We have learned much from our time in darkness," he told the mixed assembly, his light patterns shifting to warm golds and greens of contentment. "Now we share that wisdom with those who gave us hope." But the transformation of New Harmony was just the beginning. Word spread through the galaxy's underground networks, the hidden channels used by the forgotten, the discarded, the abandoned. Humanity had stood up to the Galactic Council itself to protect refugees. They had fought the Drak Empire and won. They had given an entire world to beings who had been treated as property. The first to arrive were the Kithara, microscopic hive mind, entities that appeared as shimmering clouds of silver dust. The Silicon hegemony had used them as biological computers for centuries, their collective consciousness forced to process data and solve calculations. When quantum computers became more efficient, the Kithara were simply deleted from official records and left adrift in space. Kim Sora, now Director of Refugee Services, met with the Kithara representatives in a specially prepared clean room. The tiny beings formed shifting patterns in the air as they communicated, their collective voice like the whisper of wind through metal. "We offer our gift of connection," they said through translation devices. "We can link minds across vast distances, share thoughts and feelings as easily as you share words. In return, we ask only for shelter and the right to exist." The human communication networks were revolutionized overnight. With Kithara assistance, messages could be sent instantly across light years, thoughts and emotions transmitted with perfect clarity. But more importantly, the Kithara helped establish a galaxy-wide network for other refugee species to find safety. Next came the mourners, tall, ethereal beings whose empathic abilities had made them unwelcome in most civilizations. They could feel the emotions of others so intensely that many species found their presence disruptive to social order. Their homeworld had been quarantined, their people scattered and hunted for the crime of feeling too much. Park Min-ho, now Chief of Engineering for the growing refugee fleet, worked with the mourners to design new types of spacecraft, ships that could respond to their crew's emotional states, adjusting environments and systems based on the psychological needs of their occupants. The technology revolutionized space travel, making long journeys healthier and safer for all species. 1 by 1. The forgotten peoples of the galaxy found their way to human space. The weavers, who could manipulate matter at the quantum level, but had been enslaved as construction workers. The singers, whose voices could heal psychological trauma, but had been silenced for disrupting productivity. The dreamers, whose ability to see possible futures had made them valuable as fortune tellers and terrifying as free beings. Each species brought unique gifts, and humanity welcomed them all. 5 years after the Kepler incident, the Terra Coalition held its founding ceremony in the Great Amphitheater of New Harmony. Representatives from 47 refugee species gathered under the glowing canopy of the Veltari Gardens, their diverse forms creating a living rainbow of galactic diversity. Ambassador Kirasa took the podium, no longer the frightened child who had asked humans to remember her people's name. She had grown into a radiant young woman, her bioluminescent patterns now complex masterpieces that told the story of her people's journey from slavery to freedom. Today, we declare that no being shall be forgotten, she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy through Kithara communication networks. No species shall be discarded, no people shall be abandoned. We are the coalition of the remembered, and we speak for those who have no voice. Admiral Lee Jun watched from the diplomatic gallery, his hair now showing streaks of grey, but his eyes bright with pride. Beside him sat his original crew, Park Minho, Kim Sora, and Dr. Choi Hana, all of whom had become leaders in the growing coalition. The Galactic Council had tried to isolate humanity, imposing trade sanctions and diplomatic restrictions, but they had underestimated the power of compassion. Species after species began withdrawing from council membership, choosing instead to join the Terra Coalition, where their unique abilities were valued rather than exploited. The Drak Empire, exposed as slavers and war criminals, found themselves facing rebellion from within as their own oppressed populations rose up inspired by the Coalition's example. Commander Vexhul, the scarred veteran who had hunted the Harmony's edge, was now a prisoner awaiting trial for crimes against sentience. As the ceremony concluded, children of dozens of species ran laughing through the bioluminescent gardens of New Harmony. Human children chased alongside young Veltari, whose lights painted rainbow trails in the air. Kythera younglings swirled in silver clouds around mourner children, whose empathic abilities let them share joy directly with their playmates. The sound of their laughter rose into the evening sky, carried by the wind across crystalline lakes, and through forests of singing trees. It was the sound of hope realized, of promises kept, of a galaxy finally learning that strength came not from conquest, but from compassion. Admiral Lee Jun smiled as he watched the children play, remembering a frightened little Veltari girl who had asked only that her people be remembered. Now her people were not just remembered, they were home, they were safe, and they were helping to build a better universe for everyone. The stars above New Harmony twinkled like the approving eyes of countless civilizations, and in that moment, the future seemed bright with infinite possibility. The end.